I always thought rock bottom would feel louder, but instead, it was quiet. So quiet that the only thing I could hear was the mechanical beeping of my heart monitor and the hollow sound of my own disbelief. By the way, where are you watching from, and what time is it right now? I love seeing where all of you are tuning in from. Now, let me take you back a little. Just a few months ago, when I was still naive enough to believe that some people were off limits. So, I was admitted to the hospital for a pretty scary reason. I'd had a major abdominal surgery after complications from fibroids and had to stay in recovery longer than expected. I wasn't some elderly patient either. I'm 38, relatively active, and I thought my support system was solid. I mean, I had my husband, Brent. We'd been married for 7 years. Things weren't perfect, but whose marriage is? Brent was the kind of guy who showed up with flowers during hard times and told jokes that didn't always land, but still made you laugh out at pity. He worked from home most days, so he promised he'd be with me at the hospital every day. And then there was my nurse, Jenna. Blonde, mid-30s, cheerful, with that soft, calming voice that made you feel like everything would be okay, even when it clearly wasn't. From day one, she was overly sweet. Not just professionally sweet, like bedside manner sweet, but sweet in that way that made you feel like you were sharing secrets. At first, I was grateful. Jenna always gave me extra time. She braided my hair when I couldn't lift my arms. She brought in lavender oil to rub on my temples when I had migraines. She even cried when I cried one night after waking up in pain. But then I started noticing little things. And you know how they say intuition never lies? Mine was screaming at me, but I kept shoving a pillow over its mouth. Like how Brent would suddenly stop talking when Jenna walked into the room, and then they'd exchange these glances, these little flickers of something just a bit too intimate. Or how he started bringing coffee for her every morning without asking me first. It's nothing, I told myself. She's your nurse. He's just being polite. But then there was that one night, that one awful night that changed everything. It was 2 a.m. I'd just come out with a heavy dose of pain meds, and I felt nauseous. I pressed the call button, but no one came. After 5 minutes of waiting, I got up, slow, unsteady, still clutching my IV pole. I figured I'd peek out into the hallway to get someone's attention. But the hallway was empty. I shuffled all the way to the nurse's station, still no Jenna. No one. Then I heard voices. Outside. Through the glass doors that led to the staff parking lot. Curious, and more than a little annoyed, I wandered over to the windows near the waiting room. And there, under the dim yellow light of a flickering street lamp, I saw them. Brent and Jenna, locked in what can only be described as a heated embrace. His hands were on her waist, her fingers tangled in his hair. They weren't talking. They were kissing. I remember the cold against the glass as I leaned into it in disbelief. The metal from my IV pole clanged softly against the window frame. They didn't hear it. They didn't see me. I didn't even cry. I just stood there, feeling like my soul had detached from my body. My husband, my nurse, the 2 people I trusted most in that moment, were having an affair 10 feet away from my hospital bed. When I finally made it back to my room, I sat on the edge of the bed until my body gave out and I collapsed backward. The next morning, Brent showed up like everything was normal. He brought me a croissant, kissed my forehead, and asked me how I slept. And I played dumb. I told him I was feeling a bit stronger. I asked him how his night was. He said, uneventful. I looked him straight in the eye and said, that's nice. Jenna came in shortly after. No guilt, no sign of the midnight makeout session in the parking lot. She checked my vitals, offered me a ginger ale, and smiled like nothing had happened. I knew I needed a plan. Confrontation in a hospital gown didn't seem like a power move. I needed control. I needed facts. And most of all, I needed revenge. So I started watching, listening, taking notes. Every time Brent left the room for calls, I timed how long he was gone. I noticed Jenna's shift changes. I even convinced the nurse tech to bring me printouts of her rotation schedule for my anxiety. I started recording. I set my phone to voice memo and placed it in the drawer. I captured little things, him whispering to her, her giggling, the way she touched his shoulder too often, nothing explicit, until one day they slipped up. They thought I was asleep. I'd taken half my pain meds early to feign drowsiness. Brent leaned over to check my monitors like he was concerned, then kissed my forehead. Jenna came in with meds. They thought I was out cold. He whispered something like, "Last night was incredible. Let's get away after she's discharged." She giggled, "Soon. She's healing faster than we thought." My heart pounded in my ears. There it was, solid proof. I sent that audio to my friend Tasha, who just happened to be a paralegal for a family law firm. Within 24 hours, she had a divorce attorney looped in. The day I was discharged, I had already filed. But that wasn't enough. I made one last call to the hospital administrator. I told her I had reason to believe one of her nurses was violating the patient-caregiver boundary and that I had recordings. I emailed the audio files, and I waited. 2 days later, I got a call. Jenna had been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Brent, of course, had no idea what was coming. He still thought I was clueless. So imagine his shock when he got served the divorce papers at his office, followed by a subpoena from the hospital's legal team. Turns out, they take nurse-patient affairs involving spouses very seriously. But the twist? I wasn't the first. Jenna had done this before, 2 years ago, with another patient's son. That case had been swept under the rug. But now, with recordings and a pattern, the hospital had to act. She lost her license. Brent lost his marriage, his reputation, and about half his income thanks to the spousal support my attorney secured. And me? I moved in with Tasha temporarily, started therapy, took long walks, let myself grieve the betrayal. I also lost 15 pounds, not because I was trying to, but because for the first time in a while, I wasn't suppressing anything with food. Funny thing, pain really is an appetite suppressor. Months later, Brent tried to crawl back crawling. Said Jenna ghosted him once her nursing license got revoked. He sent flowers, a handwritten letter, even showed up outside my therapist's office once. But I just looked at him, smiled, and said, "You should have stayed in the parking lot." There's something liberating about turning heartbreak into power. I didn't just survive, I exposed them. I reclaimed my dignity. And I promise you this, betrayal doesn't break you. It shows you who really belongs in your story. So tell me, what would you have done if I were you?